Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Tim Lee. I'm a research analyst at Red Cloud Securities. I'm delighted to host a Red Cloud webinar on gold exploration and development today. We will hear from Jason Bonson, CEO of Tempus Resources. During today's webinar, he will provide an overview and outlook. Then we will take questions. You can type your questions into the chat box at any time, and we'll get to as many as we can. Before we kick things off, first we need to discuss the fine print. During this Tempus Resources webinar, forward-looking statements may be made. I would direct listeners to the company's forward-looking statements outlined on page 2 of Tempus corporate presentation that can be found on the company's website, tempusresources.com.au. For Red Cloud Securities, Inc., I would highlight that this webinar is for information purposes only. It should not be considered a solicitation or a recommendation to buy or sell securities. We note that this call does not consider the particular situation or needs of individual investors. Participants should rely on their own investigation and seek their own professional advice before investing. Please see our most recent research located on the Red Cloud website for specific disclosures on Tempus. So Tempus is focused on gold exploration and development. They have projects in both Canada and Ecuador. Their Black Dome Elizabeth project in British Columbia has the distinct advantage of hosting a past producing mine and mill, as well as high-grade veins that the company has been exploring. The company's projects in Ecuador also give a pipeline of additional exploration upside. So without further ado, I now turn it over to Jason to update our audience on the company.
Great. Thank you, Tim, and thank you, everyone that's dialed in today. So mentioned Tempus. Tempus is North America's focused explorer, gold explorer. We're listed in Australia, TMR, and on the Venture Exchange, TMRR, and on the OTC. So we've talked briefly about the forward-looking statements. Here's a snapshot of where we operate in 2 prolific mining districts, Tier 1 jurisdictions. The main focus is the company's flagship Elizabeth Black Dome project in southern British Columbia. We'll talk about the detail. As Tim mentioned, it's an historic producer. There's an existing 200 ton per day mill on the property. And there's an historic resource. It's 2 projects put together, Black Dome and Elizabeth, and there's a combined resource of approximately 436,000 ounces, which is currently not non-compliant NI 43-101, but something we're addressing with the drilling, and we'll be coming up with an updated resource in due course. As mentioned, our other area of focus is in Ecuador. We're right in a very prolific cordera for gold and copper. We're surrounded by some majors there. It's early stage exploration, but we're active there, sending a team there next week. So we'll talk more about that. It's opportunistic for both gold and copper mineralization. Just a snapshot on the metrics of the company. So I mentioned ASX listed, 125 million shares outstanding. We've raised about $8 million in cash over the past 12 months, and we have cash available right now. Lots of liquidity in Australia, and we're building the liquidity here in Canada as well. And we have some institutional shareholders on board in the company. Let's look in the detail of the projects, starting with Black Dome Elizabeth in Canada. And just to give you an idea of the neighborhood, it's about 200 kilometers north of Vancouver. So on the way past Whistler, up to Lillooet, Pemberton, and it's in behind there. And as you can see from the picture, we're in a great neighborhood. You have 2 other explorers, West Haven and West Haven and Talisker in the area. We look at the sort of valuations of those companies, and we think, hey, there's an opportunity for Tempus to get a sort of re-rating here as well. But it's a very sort of prolific area, good access to infrastructure. And I think this presents an opportunity both for operational synergies. There's several mills around, including ours, as well as potential sort of corporate opportunities down the track. So it's a very active area where and we have a lot of support in the region here. Just going to look in a little bit more detail. So as I mentioned, both of these projects had historic resources on them. We're currently drilling. We're in a campaign of doing exploration to increase the size of those resources on both projects. At Black Dome, as you can see from this picture, both of these projects are joined and contiguous a set of licenses, including a potential future haul road between Elizabeth and the mill at Black Dome, which is about 30 kilometers away. I mean, both projects are quite sizable, 200 square kilometers, and Elizabeth about 115 square kilometers. So large projects with the potential to host a large sort of resource base here. Now, we began drilling at Black Dome in 2020. We drilled 5,000 meters while we were waiting for more permits at Elizabeth. And since that, we have been focused on the Elizabeth project. We've drilled about 10,000 meters in total. We started drilling Elizabeth about a little over a year ago, November 2020. So we've had a little more than a year of full drilling. And as you can see from the side notes here, both projects have a historic resource on them of around 200,000 ounces. And I think that, the key here is that this is high grade, compare it to a lot of other, gold projects. As you can see from even these historic resource numbers, we're at the sort of 10, 12 grams in terms of an average historic resource grade. So this is extremely sort of high grade gold deposits. Slightly different geology with both. Elizabeth is a mesothermal deposit, and Black Dome more of a classic epithermal deposit. But we'll talk about that in more details on our drilling here on this slide here. So this is a plan view of the drilling we're doing at Elizabeth, and this represents a very small portion of the overall project. And the historic resource at Elizabeth was mostly associated with this southwest vein that you'll see in the middle of the diagram. And that has about 70% of the historic resource on that vein. So we've come in and drilled an additional 10,000 meters of drilling, 9,750 meters of drilling. We have been focusing on extending that southwest vein, both at depth and along strike. And to give you an idea of the total strike distance of these veins is about 800 meters, so almost a kilometer. Now, there's a number of veins. There's over 10 distinct veins that have been identified, and we're finding more. This is what we're seeing with the project, that the veins are sort of replicated at a fairly even sort of spacing, based on our current information, about 150 meters between the vein sets. And, the veins that we're encountering, these are subvertical quartz veins hosted in a dioritic intrusion. So very competent sort of ground. And none of them have been extended much more than 100 meters at depth. But our model for this, as I mentioned, we're very close to the historic Braylorn camp, and they're mined down to 2,000 meters total depth. So we're just scratching the surface if this does turn into to be a model very similar to Braylorn. But so the focus of this first phase of drilling was on the southwest vein to extend that, and also to identify new veins. For example, in July, you'll see just to the northwest of the southwest vein, we've noted this sort of blue vein. Now, we identified that in July of this year with a drill hole number 12, it is, where we encountered 1 meter at 33 grams per ton. So this was previously a completely new vein that hadn't been discovered previously, and we've the tail end of our drilling program of this year, we focused quite a few holes on this blue vein that we're still waiting on assays for. But to give you just an idea on the sort of grades we're looking at, and just have a sort of list here, and this shows the southwest vein versus the blue vein. These are the sort of grades, this bonanza sort of grades that we're intersecting. 5 meters at 61 grams, including 1.5 at 186. The blue vein is EZ 2112. That was the discovery hole, 1 meter at 33 grams. Now we have 4 more holes in that in the blue vein that we're waiting on. So here's just looking at specifically at the blue vein, from the discovery hole, EZ12, we've got a couple of other assays. Now we have 4 more holes here, everything from 24 up to 28, which are focused on extending this at depth and along strike. So we're hoping to have these assays already. There's been some delay over the Christmas period, and we're sure we're going to have the assays before the end of January. So keep an eye out for those results. But based on what we saw in the core looks fantastic. It's very mineralized. We're seeing thicknesses 0.5 meter to 1.5 meters and more on the intersections. So certainly stay tuned for press releases in the next 2 weeks that are going to highlight this blue vein. And why it's important is, as I mentioned, the southwest vein. Just going back to the plan view briefly, the southwest vein contains about 70% of the 200 and something, about 140,000 ounces of the historic resource on the Elizabeth project. Now that's only to 100 meters of depth. We've extended that at depth, so we're expecting some upside in there. But in finding the parallel blue vein, and there's multiple other veins on this property, this is what we're thinking we're going to see. A number of veins, let's say in the sort of range of 100 to 200,000 ounces per vein. And we're pleased that we're seeing these veins sort of replicated as we go to the west here. And there's been very little drilling. You can see from it's the black dots on this diagram show how sparse the previous historical drilling had been. So there's been very little drilling on the west vein, the main vein. These are other veins that we intend to continue to sort of drill and to increase the sort of strike length on that. So, what we're seeing, we don't know that it's open at depth. These veins are open along strike, and we're seeing some VG, very high grades, as evidenced by the assays. But the important thing is we're seeing the sort of structure on a replicated on a continuous sort of basis here. So the blue vein is certainly exciting, but there's a lot more potential. This gives you an idea of the depth of the drilling. We can see the extent of the drilling, roughly about 100 to 200 meters, depending upon the location. And the southwest vein is the main vein here in the center of the picture. And now we've established the blue vein, all these other veins yet to be drilled. And the other important point is, as you can see from the topography, and there is some historical tunnels on these property, this was originally explored as early as the 1940s. Some of these drifts were old track drifts that were driven in that period of time. And this lower portal, where currently we have a plan of operations application in process with the Ministry of Mines to get access this lower portal, which goes in 800 meters. And for a very little bit of development work, about 300 meters of development in this exploration drift, we're going to put a crosscut at the end of this drift where it says planned underground extension. And that'll give us a fantastic access for drilling from underground, fanning these holes both down and up. And we'll be able to drill a number of these veins. And once we're established underground, be able to extend that underground network to access the other veins. So it'll give us a, where previously we've been drilling through up to 100 meters of overburden, which is heavily oxidized ultramafics on top, which is leads to challenges. We'll be able to be very efficient in drilling these from underground. So I think going into next season, we'll have a combination of surface. We'll be developing the underground with the permits, with the aim by the time we come to next winter, we have the underground drilling underway, and we'll be able to drill all year round there. At the moment we're restricted to, really locked out from sort of October until we got in very early June last year. It's at about 2,000 meters in the elevation in the mountains in southern British Columbia. So we do get some winter, especially this year. But, this is something where we're progressing with the underground development, and we expect that to come in over the next few months. Then we'll do some contract mining there and set up for drilling of all these veins. The bigger overall picture on Elizabeth, as we've been looking at that plan view on the previous, as you can see, that's just what we're calling Elizabeth Main. Now, we did geophysics on the property this June, the beginning of this year season. And it's the first time that modern geophysics have been done over on the whole Elizabeth property. And what it identified, we did aeromag, and where it identified is that the intrusive block that hosts the mineralization at Elizabeth is much, much larger than we previously thought. So this is where we're really looking at the potential for upside to the scale of this project. So it's, currently the, Elizabeth Main, it's a small area of a couple square kilometers. Now we've identified that it's really up to 4 times the previous size. So this opens up a number of other sort of Elizabeth-style targets on this property that have yet to be ground truthed in any way. There's been very little sampling, no drilling. As we see here, we have Elizabeth East, which also we have a soil geochemical anomaly on. So there's a lot of potential for a much larger sort of system here. And we talk quite a bit about Braylorn as one potential model for this. And this puts it into scale. Here's a long section showing the geophysics, showing the drilling that we've done. This is to scale. So this is done the historical drilling and the drilling we've done. And you can see this porphyry, which is effectively the intrusion that's hosting the gold mineralization. And so we've just begun to really tap the potential of this in terms of depth. And if our model is correct, we could see this have a couple thousand meters in a perfect world of vertical development to the mineralization here. So it's pretty exciting in terms of the larger overall sort of scale on what we can find here, but it's all, yeah. So some previous drilling, we're going to expand on additional veins here, explore some of these other satellite deposits, and really start to get a handle on what is the potential scale of this overall project. So, I mean, that's Elizabeth. This is one part of it. And then we have Black Dome. And this is the first time, as I mentioned, that both these properties have been joined in one ownership structure. And it's important because this is a picture of the existing mill at Black Dome. So it operated from 1985 to 1991, produced 230,000 ounces at a head grade of 22 grams per ton. I mean, this is extremely high grade. Now, that was all from the Black Dome deposit, which is got a lot of mining left in it as well. But this infrastructure, the mill is about a 200 ton a day. It's conventional gravity and then into flotation to produce a concentrate. So producing a doré from the gravity and a concentrate. We're currently doing a study with JDS Engineering in Vancouver on rehabilitating this mine, the mill, and what would it take. And we're getting close to getting the final answers there. But it's most of the capital is in place. It's a very nominal capital to get this up and running again, based on what we're seeing. And we may also look at the potential for expanding the mill, bringing it up to 300 ton a day. So all this engineering work is going on concurrently with the exploration. So I guess, Tempus is somewhat unique in that regard, that we are an exploration program. We have to firm up a new modern resource on it. But once we have that resource, I mean, the thing that's really attractive about Tempus is we do have the ability to fast track this into production. So Black Dome is a mining license. So these are fully permitted. We have an existing tailings dam that's fully permitted. The mill is in excellent shape. We can get that up and running again in a short period of time. So we're starting to tick off, concurrently with our exploration work, we're ticking off some of the engineering and development work that needs to be done to bring this. So we're working on effectively PEA level components, doing the mill, looking at the resource. And once we that will enable us to accelerate this once we're comfortable with the resource to move it into the development phase. So I think it is quite unique in that regard. And Black Dome itself, I mentioned we did 5,000 meters of drilling in 2020. The results of that, which are all publicly disclosed, have a broad mineralization. We're seeing a lot of zones. It's nuggety. We're seeing some variability in grade. So to really better understand this, and you can see the area of our drilling was up here in this, what is on the right side of this chart. But in the summertime, we brought in a fellow named Dr. Jeffrey Hendenquist, a very well-known epithermal gold expert. So he came in to look at the core and opine upon, where are we in terms of the epithermal system, which are vertically constrained in terms of grades, and they look at the quartz textures of the in the core and other detailed work that's all focused on what was the temperature when this mineralization was formed, where's the sort of upside. Anyway, the preliminary results of all that is a generation of some additional target areas where the previous operators, and you can see the historic workings here in the levels that are at Black Dome, is that there's a lot of potential below the current workings. They didn't go deep enough once you look at the alteration in detail. So we're planning on both, like I mentioned, drilling at Elizabeth in the next year, and it's sort of the 10,000 meters is not an unrealistic target for Elizabeth next year, and a couple thousand meters of drilling at Black Dome to see if we can really find the sort of sweet spot, what's left there. Now, with so we'll be doing more work on this next year, and then we have potentially two sources. I guess once we get to the production phase, we'll have two sources of feed for the Black Dome mill. We could truck it up from Elizabeth, and we'll have some from Black Dome. So, another one aspect of this PEA level work we've done, last year we, which we announced in July of this past year, is we did a deep dive on the metallurgy and understanding, is there any refractory nature to this at all? Can we treat the Elizabeth ore in the Black Dome mill? Can we blend the Elizabeth and Black Dome ore together and produce a concentrate? What is the impact of all this? And luckily, the previous owners had done a fair bit of metallurgical bench work in 2009, 2010. And the conclusions that came out of this is the existing mill is very, very suitable with minimal changes to treat Elizabeth ore. We're getting 95% recovery, high-grade concentrate. We looked at utilizing the existing Black Dome plant, which is crushing, grinding, producing a doré off of the gravity feed, and then going into flotation and producing a gold concentrate. And we'll get a 95% recovery on that. You can blend the ore with Elizabeth. And now we're also looking at the potential to increase the size of that plant. So at the sort of grades we're talking about, to give you an idea, 200 to 300 ton per day, we're looking at 25, 30,000, 40,000 ounces in that sort of range per annum. Would be, we'd be targeting a similar head grade to previously in that sort of 10, 11, 12 gram per ton sort of head grade. So, but we've also looked at, could we take it another step further, produce a cyanidation, carbon and pulp type process on site, and would that impact anything in terms of recoveries or capex, etc.? And again, the work showed a 95% recovery. So, I mean, the recoveries are fantastic. We have actual, these test work is based on actual rock from both Elizabeth and Black Dome. So it's very, appropriate to what we're doing here. And we're in the next month or so, we'll have completed this study on bringing the mill back into operation, and we'll have a capex and an operating costs on that. But given the grades, the preliminary numbers look very robust. At current sort of gold prices. So we believe we'll have a very good sort of operating margin when we bring this into production. But the key at the moment, while we do all this other engineering work, is to keep focusing on enlarging the resource and increasing the size of the resource. So we'll not have the specific timing on our resource estimate right now, but we are working on that, and over the next year we'll be looking at producing a sort of maiden resource once we've done sufficient drilling. We really want to see how the new drilling at Black Dome comes up as well in this upcoming sort of season. So it's kind of a snapshot on Elizabeth Black Dome in British Columbia. And let's go and turn now to Ecuador. And Ecuador is going to focus on gold and copper, early stage, but in a very prolific part of the world, a sexy jurisdiction. And we'll just take a look at that, where, we're in this Cordillera here, Cordillera del Condor, it's called, which hosts a number of large copper, porphyry, and gold deposits. You have Mirador, which is Chinese railway construction companies operating an open pit mine. I think it's running at around 20 million ton per year of throughput of ore. This is, in terms of distance, that is less than 10 kilometers on the same structure, all on this, so through this whole fault zone, the Fruta del Norte fault zone. Fruta del Norte is owned by Lundin. They're about a 10 million ounce deposit right now that bringing into development. That is adjacent to our Rio Zarza. So we have two distinct properties here. We're surrounded by Newcrest and Lundin joint venture. So we're in a great neighborhood. Now on these projects, we own them 100%. Last year we did a fair bit of groundwork at Valley de Tigra, where we did geophysics, and we did geophysics and an initial sampling program. This week, we're sending a team back into Ecuador this week to do a very detailed mobile metal ion sampling program that is going to include the area of the geophysical anomalies that we identified, which showed potential for both copper and gold, and the previous sampling. So we're going to have a team. We'll take about 1,000 samples, send those away, and get a very distinct sort of footprint and vectors of the mineralization on this property. Now, previously, when we've been in there, we've seen bornite, chalcopyrite. You see local miners mining gold in a pan, as you can see in this photo here. So it's an exciting project that's in the right neighborhood. We're seeing the correct sort of indicators on the property, and we'll be sampling that over the next month. The intensive sort of program over the next month at Valley de Tigra. Our other project in Ecuador is the Rio Zarza project. This one is, you can see the proximity. This shows a representation of Lundin's Fruta del Norte. There's some previous drilling done by a previous owner that didn't go deep enough. The thesis is that this potentially hosts the extension of Fruta del Norte, and they're quite deep holes, well over 1,000 meters drilling. We're not in a rush to drill those holes just yet. We're waiting to see what we see with the overall sort of package and at Valley de Tigra as well, and then decide about the next stage of the sort of drilling here at Rio Zarza. Tim, that more or less gives you a sort of overview. I'm happy to go into any of the details in more on the slides. That gives the watchers a good overview, and happy to take any questions.
Great. All right. Yeah, thank you, Jason, for a very informative presentation. So we'll now start the Q&A portion of the webinar. A reminder to everyone on the line that you can type your questions into the chat box at any time. We already do have a couple of questions here. First, when do you expect to have more assay results from 2021 drilling?
I think we'll have them within weeks. We've been chasing the labs, as you can imagine. There had been some delays over sort of the Christmas period with COVID and everything else affecting sort of throughputs in the labs. But we're anticipating having those results of the 4 more holes. We have 9 holes in total in assay right now. 4 of those are specific to the blue vein and the extension of the blue vein. And as I mentioned, the core on those looks fantastic. I mean, let's see what the numbers come back at, but we're anticipating some good solid numbers, in line with the, multi digit sort of gram per ton sort of numbers we've seen so far. And the other 5 holes are some broader exploration holes. One, maybe some also trying to target other veins as well. So we should have all those assays from the 21 drilling by the end of the month, by the end of January.
Great. And one question more on the community relations side. What is your relationship with the First Nations, and obviously in British Columbia, and also what is your relationship with the local community in Ecuador?
Yes, thank you for asking that question. It's something that should have brought up. Tempus has done quite a good job in terms of engaging with our First Nations groups around Black Dome and Elizabeth, and we've spent a lot of time building good, solid relationships. We have an existing exploration permit in place on Elizabeth with the Haitian group. We're currently negotiating, finalizing an exploration group that'll cover Black Dome and Elizabeth. And we take this serious. We have a full-time dedicated First Nations advisor on our team, and we get a lot of positive feedback from our First Nations partners. And for example, at Elizabeth this year, we had 22 people on site. Over half of them were from the First Nations community. So we're integrating them into our environmental monitoring, our cultural monitoring. The people from that First Nations are part of our team out there collecting the data. So they're fully integrated into the program, and we're happy to provide training and improve the sort of skill set, because that helps us as well, and have a workforce right there. So it's gone well. It's something we take very seriously, and I think we've built some good relationships that we look forward to building further.
Great.
And Ecuador, likewise, it's a different situation, but in some ways, it all comes, I guess our approach is really to engage with people and recognize, their traditional rights to these areas and lands, and to partner with them in terms of. So in Ecuador, we've spent time with First Nations communities there. We help them with training. Some of those communities are very remote, in the sort of rainforest, really. So we try to bring them into for training and improve and utilize their team where we can as well. So we're well positioned, I guess, in terms of the First Nations, and we spend a lot of time on the sort of groundwork, which is paying off now.
Great. And then looking at the past producing mill, what is the state of the mill? Obviously, it hasn't been used since 1991. Would you be able to use the old equipment, or to what extent do you need to start over?
Yeah, in most cases, that equipment is, things like ball mills. They haven't changed too much, and it's a simple little circuit, the crushing, the grinding, and then basically the gravity and the flotation. So it's very simple. We can utilize most of the equipment. We have existing power gen sets on site. We're expecting the total cost to come in, below $5 million to get this mill up and running again. And this is the sort of numbers we're seeing in the preliminary work now. We'll see the final number in due course. But that's a great, as you can see, the photo of the building in the presentations. That's what the mill looks like right now. So it's the infrastructure is in place, and the tailings infrastructure is in place. The power is there. The water, everything. We'll as we progress the engineering work and get closer to a production decision, we'll continue to refine that and refine the sort of permitting. But really, this is not like starting over. We're just putting a plan of operations on our existing mining lease, which is in total compliance. So it's a great position to be in, that we have that infrastructure that was only used for about 5 years. So we're just, like I say, fine tuning the capital costs and the projected operating costs, but the numbers I'm seeing are looking very encouraging.
Great. And that was a relatively modest size, 200 ton a day mill.
Yes.
You do have plans to expand or add capacity to that?
We're looking at the ability, and the bottleneck in these things, and talking to the engineers, is typically your grinding circuit is the bottleneck, which is easy to replicate and put another grinding, a ball mill in parallel. So, that's where your retention time is, and the grinding time. So we're looking at there is I guess a limit to how much you could sort of step change it, but we're looking at bringing that capacity from the current sort of 200 to sort of 300-400 ton per day. So we're looking at those options right now with our mill study. Initially we focused on, okay, how much is it to get this existing mill up and running the way it is right now? And then what are our options for one expansion, and also the addition of cyanidation to produce gold right on site. So we're exploring those options now, and over the next several months we may have some information to provide the market on that. So it is expandable. Let's say that would take it from, as I mentioned, the 30,000 ounces at 200 ton a day is not an unrealistic number. If we could double that, and it's all dependent on the resource, of course, as well, Tim, and in terms of the drilling and how Black Dome comes out. But Black Dome is certainly, relatively untouched, as is Elizabeth. So there's a tremendous amount of upside in terms of the size of the resource at both projects, I would say, and that it could drive the ultimate scale of the, once we get to the engineering point and pre-feasibilities and the scale of the operation.
Great. And then what are the plans? You had touched on this, but what are the plans for the Ecuador projects? Are you in discussions with potential partners there?
Yeah, I mean, we do get a lot of interest on the Ecuador projects, given where they are and who our neighbors are. And we're reluctant to do a deal right now where we're wanting to see really what we have. We believe both these projects, one, Rio Zarza with the potential extension of the Fruta del Norte sort of mineralization, but with Valle de Tigra, which is directly in line and could have potential for both copper porphyry and gold. So we have some more work we want to do there before we make any strategic decisions. It's something that over the next year we'll start thinking about once we get the results from this mobile metal ion sampling program, which give us a very good sort of footprint of the overall background mineralization on the property. That's on a 200 by 50 meter grid over a very large section of the project. So a fairly detailed look. So that we'll see. I mean, Ecuador, we like Ecuador. It's got a positive pro-mining regime in place now, and pro-foreign investment. It's very prolific in terms of the mineralization endowment, both for base metals and gold. You see all the majors in there over the past sort of 10 years. Again, it's not our sort of key focus. We're really focused on the production scenario at sort of Black Dome. So, I mean, it's maybe 60-40, 70-30 in terms of the weighting of our time and capital is to British Columbia. But Ecuador, we'll see over the next few months. We'll be focusing on progressing those projects in Ecuador. We'll see what we get.
Great. And kind of, obviously you are doing some of the work to evaluate bringing the mill back into production, but thinking ahead, what is the long-term strategy for the company? Would you like to become a producer, or would you look to maybe sell, or
Yes.
to a producing company at some point?
Well, I guess you always look at these things on an ongoing basis. We're opportunistic, and it's all about maximizing value for shareholders. So if someone did come along and wants to take us out, that's a scenario. But I think we believe in the the production story here. We think we'd be well positioned to be a low cost, high grade. This will be underground mining. Smaller scale underground, but high grade. When I look at the sort of revenues that you can generate from 40,000 ounces of gold per year, you can do a lot as a junior company. We may well want to be a producer. My background, and one of the reasons Tempus brought me in, I have a strong background in underground gold mining. I worked for contractors in Canada, Yellowknife, Australia. I've been involved in a lot of underground mine development and operations. So when I look at this, it does look like a nice, simple, small scale mine, but high grade. This is the key. Grade is king in all these things, both from our cost perspective and the viability of the project. So yeah, I want to see, we'll see what we come out with a maiden resource. You'd want to have a good 10-year sort of mine life mapped out and look at the sort of scale, look at what we can do with that plant and, optimize that production scenario. But I think, we'd be very happy to be a producer as well as, whatever is, it's all about maximizing value for shareholders.
Great. Well, I think that's all the questions submitted, but I guess one kind of general question here is just to review, what news would we look forward to over the coming weeks and months from Tempus?
Well, I think over the short term, you're going to see something very, very soon on this program in Ecuador. That we're going back in and doing the sampling. And we have already been doing some of the preliminary line cutting work and had a team of locals down there. We're sending our 2 geologists from British Columbia down next week. So we'll see some announcements on that. We'll see the announcement on the drill results for 9 more holes. I'm not sure if they're going to come out in 1 batch or 2 batches. So maybe all the blue vein holes, 4 holes, coming out in the next couple of weeks, and quickly followed up by the other holes. As in due course, there'll be some information on the engineering work on this mill study that is underway. That'll be coming out over the next couple of months, and then eventually leading up to a resource at some time over the next year. New maiden resource. So there's lots of great sort of news flow, and we're starting to, while we're active in Ecuador, we've been planning that and getting going. We're starting over the next couple of months again, start thinking about getting ready for drilling again at Black Dome and Elizabeth, and hopefully it will get in there in early June, which is not that far away when you're planning the whole camp and getting all the logistics going. But we're well positioned. We have cash. We have a great drill contractor we've worked with the last few years, and he's also will be our underground driller as well. We'll have the other thing is I'm hoping in the next few months, we're waiting on permitting, but we'll have an announcement on the approval of that underground development, which is a game changer in terms of news flow all year round and really efficiently accessing the deeper part of these veins for exploration drilling. So lots of great news flow over the next few months, Tim, and it's going to be an exciting time.
Great. Well, I'd like to thank Jason Johnson from Tempus again for presenting today, and thank you everyone out there for tuning in. And a reminder that Red Cloud Securities will be back tomorrow afternoon when we present Contact Gold Tuesday, January 11th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Everyone have a great day.
Thank you, Tim. Thanks, everyone.